the reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at @Studka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 205, and against my better judgment, we are here and going to do a podcast because there ain't much good to talk about this week. It has just been one of those weeks where everything, quite literally everything, has gone wrong in the world and in the world of Tottenham Hotspur as well. We're just going to put it like that. I've got Scott alongside to talk about whatever it is all of that was. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what's going on, my friend?
Nothing good. No, you know what? I can't stand Spurs, and I'm just here so I don't get fined. But ultimately, it's a fairly good day. I got a new set of golf clubs. My parents were in town and surprised me with an early Christmas present, so I'm gonna go swing those today and see how they play. And then got a hockey game tonight. My team sucks, but it's always a good time to go get a good skate in. And so could be worse, but man, yeah, Spurs are just a bunch of morons, as we said off the air. So we'll slog through this one.
Please don't say it could be worse, because I'm afraid it actually somehow could be worse. Caroline is also here. She's at CG Stefco. Caroline, how you feeling?
Not great. I don't know why I was expecting Spurs to provide me some comfort in these trying times. They did not at all.
Nope.
But, it could have been worse, actually, because I feel like other results in our leagues have gone fairly well in our favor, that the damage was limited this weekend. So I guess there's that. But yeah, not a great weekend to be coys.
It certainly is not a great weekend, not a great week. In general, we're here. I guess we're gonna kind of treat this as like therapy. We're just gonna talk it out and get our feelings out, vomit them, and call that a podcast. I guess that's what podcasting is nowadays, to some extent. So we're gonna do that for you all, the listener and the viewer here on the YouTube page, and kind of just go from there.
Yeah, and we'll count them out for the listener just in case they're wondering here. Obviously, if your political views aligned to the three of ours, it was a really tough week. There's that loss, right? Then Spurs men, Spurs women. I'm going to throw Iowa State in there as the lone Iowa State fan. A rough loss yesterday. So, sports and politics just maybe set them to the side for a little while, and again get through this, right? But at least I've got the two of you. That's a positive. So.
Hey, and at least we don't have to talk about the men after today for another 2 weeks, because there's inexplicably another fucking international break. What are we doing? Why?
As I always say, the Nations League is the root of all evil in our
This
sport.
is like the 16th international break of the season already. In reality, I think it's the third. Is that correct? And
I think so.
This was the 11th game of the season? Round 11, 11th Premier League game of the season, and we're going into our third international break. What the fuck are we doing? Sorry to be so brash on a lovely Sunday morning otherwise, but my goodness, it's bad. It's really, really bad. I'm really frustrated. Although, again, let's look at the flip side. We don't have to think about Spurs next weekend on the men's side of things. Do want to get into telling you all about Digital Spurs. If you're not noticing, I'm wearing a Spurs Against Nazis hat for a very specific reason this week. That comes from Digital Spurs. Head over to digitalspurs.com. They have great Tottenham merch, including this hat. They've got hoodies, t-shirts, sweatshirts, all kinds of different things. Go to digitalspurs.com for your Tottenham merch. Keep an eye out later this year. We'll be doing a special promotion with Digital Spurs. Head to digitalspurs.com to find your new favorite Tottenham merch. Let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording, guys. We normally kind of go through games in order of the way that they happened. Spurs obviously played in the Europa League earlier in the week against Galatasaray. I want to push that one aside for a second. Another, obviously, defeat, the first defeat in the Europa League for Spurs this season, and talk about this game against Ipswich first, because it was ugly. There's no kind of other way to put it. and I think we almost just need to like give this one its fair due. This is the second time that Spurs have given a Premier League team its first win of the season heading into an international break after the Crystal Palace defeat a few weeks back, and they did it again. Like Spurs just succumbed to everything that you would have almost expected them to succumb to. I truly did not expect them to lose this match. I didn't expect them to play this poorly. I don't think there are many positives to take from it. Maybe you could say I really liked what I saw from Rodrigo Bentancur, not just because he scored a really great header of a goal, but just played a really, really good match. But otherwise, I thought this was potentially the team's worst performance of the season. Scott, what are your thoughts on a 2-1 defeat at home to Ipswich Town, who, once again, had not won a game this season in the Premier League?
Yeah, it's unacceptable. I agree. Bentancur had a good game. I think you probably draw the line there when it comes to positive performances. But I'm also not surprised because this is what we do prior to an international break against a weak team. We just don't show up. And it's a long-standing problem at this club, right? We've seen numerous managers come through and face the same issue. Players just not being up for a match in which they should win. And I think that phrase there, should win, is a huge piece of it, right? I think there's probably some complacency that factors in, especially knowing that in theory, tomorrow morning you pack your bags and probably head on a holiday if you're not called up to your national team, right? So again, just not mentally prepared for a match in which you should win on paper. So yeah, just really, really frustrating. And I'm just honestly sick and fucking tired of this. I always ask myself, when is it going to end? And I don't think we'll have an answer to that for some time. So,
Caroline, what's your biggest takeaway from this one?
Well, I have to disagree that this was our worst performance of the season. I don't think it was personally. Like, the Crystal Palace loss was way more painful to me because I felt like we at least saw a few glimmers in the attack in this game. Like, Son, I thought especially had a good game in terms of creating chances. Could have finished quite a few more of them. And I think Solanke and Johnson maybe have a little culpability for that. You know, they had some pretty good opportunities to score that just didn't go our way. But, you know, there was also that weird sort of Tottenham bad luck factor to it with, you know, the handball for Solanke's goal that got called off, not getting that handball penalty. These things happen. Like, a player scoring a bicycle kick against us. Didn't have that on the bingo card for today. And, you know, that's one of those situations where you kind of just have to be like, okay, fair play. But I do feel like we're starting to see some of the problems in defense really becoming clear. Like, the right side of our defense just never seems to have an agreement about who is marking who, where they need to be. I know we always joke about, you know, every time we concede a goal, you would see Davinson Sanchez in the frame. Well, lately it's been Porro and Johnson. And I feel kind of bad putting this, you know, blame on Johnson because, like, he's forward, you know, ideally he's not the last line of defense, but it has been working out that way and he's just not been, you know, getting it done. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, Johnson's certainly not who I want defending. He's not any kind of a defender, but you're right. The defense, I do want to pick on, honestly, both the center backs. I'll start with Radu Dragusin. He was awful in this match and has frankly not looked good since a couple of games ago when he had that one performance against, I want to say it was the Villa match. But the last couple he's and I guess he played against City as well, didn't he? Yeah, he played in the City match and I thought looked okay in the cup match. But the last couple has looked really quite dreadful that he's played in and was really, really bad. I thought was super at fault for the second goal, was just nowhere to be found, just kind of bundling. A lot of opportunities, too, that you see when he gets the ball and you think, okay, let's move the ball, and he's passing it backwards. He's not – I don't think in the long run he's a fit for this system, and I think that's something that we all probably know. Like, he was basically a stopgap solution when he was acquired by Spurs, but I think he's proving more and more that the depth of this center back combination is really tested when Mickey Van de Ven is out of the lineup, which he's going to be probably at least for about another month or so. And all of that is to say that I'm not going to let Christian Romero off the hook either, because despite him getting, I think what was maybe a little bit of a surprise start today, he was injured last week and missed the midweek match in the Europa League, and everyone kind of thought, oh goodness, has he done something terrible again after throwing in that challenge and picking up the yellow card last week? It turns out he apparently has some ligament damage in a toe, but doesn't have a broken foot, was able to start today's match and almost looked like he had more damage than he let on, because he was awful as well. And he hasn't really been that good of late. Like I think that's the thing that we're not hearing or saying out loud, is that the defending from both of the center backs has been piss poor. There's like no other way to put it. Romero has not been good, so I don't want to let him off the hook either. But I don't know, like when you give up a goal like they gave up early in this match, and then you give up a second, you think, okay, there does have to be, like, this is kind of the way that Spurs play. They're going to give up a goal or two every match. You just have to think, we've got to score 3 or 4 in order to win. That is ultimately where I do kind of want to put the most blame for this defeat, because Spurs just didn't seem to have any oomph going forward. They seem to be a little bit lackadaisical. Scott, you kind of alluded to it, like on the heels of going into another international break, it felt like this was the performance you were going to get out of this club. So that's what it was. I put in our group chat maybe 25 minutes into the match that I felt like this team needed to be playing faster. And I think I even said like 12% faster. It wasn't even like that far off. They just needed a little bit more effort and speed. And we just never really saw that until this team was already down 2-0 in the second half. And we saw it coming out of the break, which was nice, but the effort overall to me was not there.
Yeah. I think on the center backs, I look at Romero. Romero is fantastic in open play. He's never been terribly impressive defending in the box, in my opinion. It goes into the Porro Romero of it all. I also look at Romero, and he struggled at Juventus, ended up on loan, had a good season at Atalanta that earned him the move to Spurs, but Atalanta definitely plays a very succinct, organized system, right? And sometimes players look really, really, really good in those systems. And I'm not saying Romero's not super talented, but I also think there's flaws there that we maybe overlook because, we've got this world-class center back. And frankly, yes, he's won a World Cup, but just randomly thinking here, if let's say Eder Militao and Ruben Dias are Argentine, Romero does not start for Argentina, right? Their center back depth isn't super strong when you get into it, right? And so again, he's very talented, but I think sometimes we put Romero on this pedestal of like absolute world class, could start for any team in the world. I don't think that's necessarily the case because there are some things that continue to show as far as ways that his game is exposed. And then Dragoshin, I do think that he was brought in to be part of the system. I think it was a strategic buy. I don't think you spend close to $40 million on a 21-year-old who you don't think fits the system, right? But for whatever reason, he's not showing those capabilities. He's very young too, but him on the left side has not been good. We saw that today. Frankly, him on the right side on Thursday was not good, which we'll get to. So I'm not saying that him playing on the left side was a problem, but he just looks to be lost in all facets of the word. So yeah, a lot of work to do there. And Porro consistently lacks spatial awareness in the box when it comes to defending. I know on that first goal, there's Johnson and Porro right there, but asking Johnson to come back and then play that ball back outside of the box, the only thing Johnson can do there is give them a corner, right? Maybe, but that's that's Porro way more than Johnson for me that needs to throw his head in there and win that ball. And he just kind of stands there frozen. So again, the spatial awareness in the box from Porro is continues to be an issue. And then I'll also say Porro's fucking knackered. The dude has played so many minutes too. And I think depth and Jed Spence not being available and Archie Gray playing almost 90, if not 90 on Thursday probably factors in too, but Porro's got to be tired.
Well, they've all got to be tired. There's too many games. And again, international break. Whoop-de-doo, like let's go play some more that don't really actually mean all that much. Quote from Ange Postecoglou after this match on Spurs inconsistency. He says, quote, "That's down to me. That's my responsibility. The inconsistency we're having this year, ultimately, it comes down to me and my approach, and something I need to try and fix and see if I can help the players in that area." To that, I would say, no shit. I don't have anything really to add. We got a response too from listener Sean Hurl on Twitter, who said that was a mentality deficit performance, too passive in defense and the forward press. We let the game get away from us. Pressure on Ange grows in spite of recent good results. It's time for 2 weeks of being bantered. Look, there's no pressure on Ange for me. Like, other than, yes, we need better results. Like, this is not going to be the podcast you come to for the Ange out crowd. Like, it's not. It's just we're none of us are that reactionary, but I at least can appreciate that Ange wants to take responsibility for things. I'm fine with that, but eventually you've got to, like, show something and show results, and that's, I think, the really irritating part for me to continue to watch. In terms of the offensive output, Caroline, like, there's no reason that this team should only be putting up 1 goal against Ipswich. Effort just didn't seem. Does it come down to that for you? Was it just like they didn't have the effort going forward today? Like, the forward press didn't look as forward pressy as it did against Man City or even against Galatasaray sometimes. It certainly didn't look that way last week, in the match against Villa. Like, is it just down to effort, or is there something else broken about this?
I didn't sense a lack of effort from the forwards, honestly. I think it was just a lack of sharpness from most of them. It was like the timing being just ever so slightly off, especially with Johnson. He was so close to getting on the end of, quite a few crosses from Son. So I don't know. It seems like a cop out to say the players are tired, but I really do think the players are just tired. And because of this sort of, injury crisis we have with the wingers, there's not a lot of opportunity for rotation. And, the one option we really had today was Timo, and God bless him, but he did not help matters at all. I was so frustrated with that one shot that he had that he sent just flying over the bar. And it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, put something on frame.
If we're not getting a ton of opportunities in this game, as many as we normally would, like, you have to get that one on target. So, yeah, just frustration.
And to that point, it's not like this team didn't. I mean, there were 17 shots, only 5 of them on goal. They had 12 corners to Ipswich's 2. And I know Scott loves this. They actually, in the end, outperformed XG of Ipswich, which is baffling to me because of that second half, because they had to put Ipswich's feet to the fire. So that's just how it goes. But what did you guys think about the subs in this match? I thought that obviously Sarr coming off, it looked like he took a knock. Don't know anything about the seriousness of it, but I thought that this match needed more changes earlier, especially with what we're talking about with the amount of games. And I know we're about to go into an international break, so maybe you could feel like you can play guys a little bit longer. But other than the Sarr substitution, only 2 other subs, and they didn't come until the 84th minute when, it seems done at that point. I know you're only down a goal and trying to get that one last one back to at least get a point. But to me, it felt like there could have been a little bit more by way of changes earlier in this match.
I think so. And, it's a little tough because you've got Jed Spence on the bench, who just came back into the match day squad. So we don't really know what his fitness is. You've got Lancashire, who just got a red card in our other match this week. And it's kind of the toss up of, will he take this opportunity to redeem himself, or will his confidence have been crushed by that? We don't know, because he's so young. But I do feel like Archie Gray would have been a really good option to come in for Destiny Udogie, who I still don't think has looked quite right this season at any point. And honestly, I've been impressed by Gray every time we've seen him. I feel like he has been one of the few players who's shown a lot of composure on the ball and really trying to do things creatively, even when he's obviously not playing in his preferred position. So I would have liked to see him come in. But other than that, there's not really a ton of options in terms of like for like replacements. I feel like that was the biggest issue in this game. Every time we made a sub, we kind of had to like tinker with where everybody was situated, and it just made it really hard to kind of find any sort of flow.
Yeah. First of all, I would have started Ben Davies for sure over Radu Dragusin, right? But I maybe would have made that switch at halftime based on the first half run you had.
Can I just say, I think he's looked better with Davis than he has with Romero so far. Dragusin, that is.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%.
Well, that's because he's able to play on the right side, which I think is his preferred side when that happens. But I think when Romero's fit, you're going to play Romero on the right, and probably Dragusin gets the start over Davis on the left. But maybe that shouldn't be the case. Maybe you're right about that, Scott.
Yeah, and again, I think like we're working on a project, so if there's a toss-up between your 30-plus-year-old who's in the twilight of his career and your 21, 22-year-old who you really need to continue to bet into the system, probably go the latter. But I think Davies would have been a little bit more formidable in this match. Maybe, again, would have made that change at halftime. But then I think about, kind of like Caroline said, the rest of the subs. I don't know maybe where you go with it. There's obviously Madison on the bench, but I don't think you take Kulusevski off, and I just don't think Madison and Kulusevski playing together has proven to be terribly fruitful as of late, right? So I understand not bringing Madison on. Madison coming on at any point in time for like Sarr or something would have felt like a roll of the dice. And again, you don't take Kulusevski off. And then you got Basuma. I don't necessarily see the point of bringing Basuma on for Bentancur. Bentancur looked really good in this match and was one of the only good things we had going. So I probably would have delayed bringing Basuma on for Bentancur. Up top, he did what he could with bringing Timo on. But again, I just don't know what else you do up top. I'm not bringing Langshire on in this game. I just don't see what impact he makes at this point in his career.
What about Lucas Bergvall? I'm surprised we didn't get a look at Lucas Bergvall. I know he had a tough match on Thursday in Turkey, but like just to mix something up and have a player that maybe can do something.
I hate picking on a teenager, but he just has looked big oof every time he's played for me this year. I don't think he's brought anything at all. Period. And so I don't see the point in bringing him on. It just feels like a Hail Mary.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough.
For me, the thing with Bergvall is that he hasn't looked up to the pace of the game in the league so far. And if that was an issue we were already having with our senior players not being quick enough and sharp enough, I don't think he was going to be the solution.
I don't disagree. I'm just kind of throwing, like, at this point we're at the throw shit on the wall and hope it sticks portion of the program. One other thing I wanted to point out that was brought up by Anthony Koval on Blue Sky. Again, follow us at Tottenham Depot on Blue Sky as well, because we are over there. I know a lot of people are shifting over there from other social media platforms. It seemed like a lot of the offensive attack was just to throw crosses into the box, and not many of them were good. Obviously, the one off of Porro's foot was good that went for a goal from the corner, but a lot of them were just easily caught by the keeper, and that seemed kind of like the whole offensive attack was just try a cross without much going on in the box, and that was I think really frustrating too, because it allowed Ipswich to then do exactly what they wanted and just start a quick counter, which is kind of what led to both of their goals. It's not like Ipswich had us pinned in at any point. They were just running down the field and scoring on corners. So that was the frustrating part as well. Is there anything else that we can take away from this game other than it was extremely Spurs of them to head into another international break on the back of just like a lackluster effort? Anything else you guys want to get off your chest about this one before we talk about Galatasaray on Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that set pieces again were very poor today. We had, how many corners did you say? 11 or something?
12.
12. And I would bet that 9 of them went into the keeper's hands. So really poor execution from those who were taking corners. And I believe Poro, off the top of my head, took the majority of them.
I mean, except for the one that worked, like that's
right. 100%. We did score a goal, right? But I think knowing that we're capable of doing that, we just got to put better balls into the box more consistently. 1 and 12, just, sure, it's great, but we can do better than that. And then at the back, poor defending from set pieces. They hit the crossbar on one, right? And we were lucky to not concede another goal. So set pieces were a problem. But ultimately, this was very early season Spurs for me. Didn't take our chances, super poor finishing, lack of spatial awareness in the box, lack of execution on set pieces. We lose. So, again, the recipe was just absolutely spot on early season Spurs, and it's just concerning that's still there, right? And we're not continuing to improve in some areas. I mean, not that we're not improving, but we should have worked that out by now.
Well, and for me, the thing that is so maddening about results like this is that we know this team really gets up for those games against like the top 6 sides and then just completely underestimates teams like Ipswich time and time again. And that it's starting to become just so frustrating, especially when, we had this opportunity to climb up the table because the other results were going our way. And they're not being brutal enough, I guess,
Yeah. I mean, I said it in the group chat. If I'm the manager, I'm storming into the locker room, and I don't even think this is like hyperbole. I would storm into the locker room and I would say, fucking training tomorrow. I don't care if you have a scheduled flight, change it. You have enough money to do that, right? Get your ass into the training center tomorrow, and we got to work this out. A point needs to be made, and it needs to be an aggressive point that these kind of things cannot continue to happen. Because like Caroline just said, we show up for these big matches and then we roll over in these matches, which we should win, especially before an international break. It's like, I don't have the data sitting in front of me, but so many international windows in a row we fuck up.
The last 2. And like, I think that's the part that's really frustrating to me, is that we heard like what you're talking about, like Ange needs to go in and throw chairs. Like, we heard that kind of happened the last time, and like that he sat for 2 weeks and stewed and was pissed. And when they got back from international break, he put them through the ringer. And if that didn't work, like, do you go back to the well and do the same thing this time? It's just that's I think the part that is so maddening to me. Yeah,
and that's where I say, like, I know it sounds like I'm just like heated up and talking shit, but I would literally tell them you need to be at training tomorrow. Like, nothing will drill this into their heads better than them having to change a flight and tell their spouses and children, hey, we can't leave till Tuesday or Wednesday now because I have to go to work tomorrow. I know it's not fair to the families, right? But here we are, like, and then those that have to leave tonight or tomorrow morning for international window. Sure, go play for your national team. I'm not sure your spot's secure when you get back. So best of luck. Enjoy your next 10 days, right? I don't think anyone's spot should be secure after a 100%. Like that. Like, but that's the kind of conversation that I think the manager needs to be having at this point, because something has to be done. I'm not taking anything away from Ipswich. They're obviously a Premier League side and they're talented footballers, but come on, like, at home against Ipswich, if we're a serious team, we have to go and win that match. And honestly, we'd be in 3rd place had we won that match, and now we're in 10th. So, like, you talk about pressure and, how we stand up to that pressure. Here we are sitting in 10th place. And then I shouldn't do this. I'm going to, but Palace, Ipswich, Brighton, we win those 3 matches, we're in a title fight. And those are matches that need to be won. Like, I'm not just saying, if we would have won these 3 arbitrary games, we'd be going for a title. Those are matches that on paper you go and win. And we didn't get it done. And this is why we're continue over and over to be a banter club and Spursy and things that I hate being thrown around, but we ask for it and we do it to ourselves. And just another example today.
And the thing we have to be honest about is that it is the defense that's letting us down. We've scored the most goals in the league and we're in 10th place. Mm-hmm. So clearly the defense is not cutting it. And I think it really, like, kind of like we were talking about with Brennan Johnson, we don't want to pick on him, but at the same time, it has to be a whole team effort, especially on set pieces. So I agree. They've just got to take care of that in training because it's simply not good enough right now.
Yeah, the second I heard Rebecca Lowe on the NBC broadcast say Spurs will have a chance if results break right to go third, I thought, well, that ain't happening. And
Yep,
sure enough,
thank you.
It certainly did not. Yeah, we're recording this right now as the I Hate Tottenham derby is being played between Chelsea and Arsenal. And it only would have happened had if that finishes in a draw. We won't obviously know. Frankly, I don't really give a shit how that match finishes. Whatever happens. But let's talk about Galatasaray a little bit, because this was, I think, despite it being a 3-2 defeat, and Scott has said like the league matches are all a free hit. The cup is where it's at. So I really want to know what this one is then. But Spurs do lose to Galatasaray 3-2. But this, I thought, was a kind of a number one, it was a fun match to watch, especially for a neutral, which none of us are, but even then it was still fun. And it was kind of exactly what I expected almost. It had a very cuppy feel to it, despite it being, still in the group stage. And it had like a, let's just go have a good time and see what happens type of feel to it. Obviously we knew the environment in Istanbul was going to be something, and it was that, but Spurs fell down in this match early. Will Lancashire gets his first competitive goal on what was just like, maybe like between that and the Van de Ven Son combination early in the season, like those are I think my two favorite Spurs goals this season, between Brennan and the pass from Bentancur, and just every part of it was really, really fun to watch. And then Victor Osimhen kind of takes over a little bit, and Spurs just didn't really have an answer for him in the first half. But this was at least fun, and at least like one of those matches where I was like, I didn't fully expect to go there, and I certainly didn't expect there to go and win. I didn't really expect to go and get a point, but a point would have been great, I feel like. And the fact that they were that close and had to deal with the second half red card to Will Lancashire, which we can discuss, obviously, all of it, I kind of came away with thinking, all right, this feels like at least it was a positive momentum type of thing, despite the result not going our way. Obviously, a lot of that gets erased after what happened today against Ipswich. But if we can kind of revert back in the time machine for a second here, Caroline, like, what was your feeling coming out of this? Because I kind of felt, despite it being the first loss in the Europa League and to what I think is a pretty damn good team in Galatasaray, I was encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fair loss is how I would put it. All things considered, our injury situation, the red card, which I'm not going to be too harsh on Lancashire for, because this is what happens when you play really young players in important games. Well, I think we can disagree on how important this one was, within the league phase, but you get my point. But yeah, what I struggle with is in games like Ipswich, when we let really uninspiring forwards score against us and make it too easy for them. I don't have a problem with a player like Victor Osimhen, who's world class when he's, on his game, scoring 2 goals against us. Like, these things happen. He's really good. And especially with like our makeshift defense situation being what it was.
And a backup keeper in goal.
Exactly. Yes. So all things considered, I still felt like we put in a pretty good performance, and especially showing the mentality again when we were down to 10 men. Like, we've seen that in games before this season. So that was good. And I wish we could have just kept that spirit going into the weekend, but alas.
Yeah. Scotty, what was your thoughts on this? Like, again, defense shaky, but it was a super heavily rotated side. I wrote down some notes in this game, and it was basically like name player and then the word yikes, name a player and then the word yikes. Like, that's literally what I have in my notes. But overall, it was like, go have a quote unquote free hit. Like, I know it's a defeat in a group stage, but it kind of felt a little bit to me like a free hit, and they almost got it done despite being down a man for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I joke about the league being a free hit, you can tell from my reaction today that I don't think league matches are free hits necessarily, right? But this was as close to a free hit as you can get, in my opinion, when you look at the league phase, especially if you're Ange and you look at the rotation and the lack of depth, and you're in Galatasaray, who has a pedigree of winning. They're a very good side with a great fan base. They've got some very talented players. Lucas Torreira, fantastic midfielder. Icardi does go down with an injury, right? But world-class striker, in my opinion. And I'm not world-class, but close to it, right? Very talented striker who, frankly, off-field things are why he's in Turkey. It's not his on-field play, right? And then you got, again, Victor Osimhen, as Caroline said, who is a world-class striker and is only there because Antonio Conte, and we'll leave it at that, right? But then I look at Osimhen versus Dragusin. Ooh, that's a tough matchup. Dragusin got absolutely walked off the park by Victor Osimhen in this match. I said it in the group chat, but Romero and Van de Ven keep Osimhen quiet in a way that Dragusin and Davies just were not able to, right? So I think when I take a step back, I think our first team wins that match pretty handily, right? And so I can find some comfort in that. But I will also say, in the Europa League, which we've talked about a lot on the show, we have aspirations to win that competition. Our 3 matches prior to this were not against formidable opponents, we could say, right? And Galatasaray was our first test against a more formidable opponent who may be in the conversation for teams that could win this competition. And so I really would have liked to go out and secure a commanding win on the road. I think that really would have showed the world that we mean business in this competition. But I'm also not saying that losing this match means that we can't go on and win this competition, because we certainly can. And I believe we're in 6th or 7th place in the table right now after match week 4, if I'm not mistaken. So every reason to think that we'll go and secure top 8, which is really all that matters.
Yeah, Spurs currently sit 7th after the 4 matches with 4 to go, obviously, on 9 points, which, again, you only need to be top 8 in order to automatically qualify. You really only need to be top 24 in order to advance. So they're still in a really good spot despite this defeat. And I think that's all you could say. Now, look, there's another test coming in the next Europa League match, and that's against Roma. That is a home match, however, so a little bit easier there. But Roma are obviously no slouches, and that match comes up on Thanksgiving Day here in the States. So that is in a couple of weeks. That'll be after the Manchester City match, which is Spurs' next match. Obviously, it'll be good for Spurs to get back into league play with their bogey team in Manchester City. They can wash those, all the bad feelings of the Ipswich match away by dusting a obviously washed Manchester City team, and then go into that Roma match with a clear mind. I'm obviously being facetious. That's going to be tough. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say also, like, couple things. Roma is in the absolute mud. I watch a lot of Serie A. They're in absolute peril, dire straits right now as an organization. They fired Daniele De Rossi, which was an extremely rash decision, and it's proving to be so. And now they're already searching for another manager, 6 weeks after firing Daniele De Rossi. So that being said, Ipswich are also in the mud, and we saw what happened today. So I'm not saying we take Roma lightly, but we should go out and win that match. Then I look at City in the league and everything you're talking about, and we've had this conversation already, but I'm just done counting on anything happening in the Premier League. Again, I really mean it. We're just going to have to continue to improve the system and the project with Premier League matches. But anytime we think that we're on the cusp of maybe continuing to fight for top 4, boom, Ipswich comes up and we nosedive, right? So I'm just quite dejected when I look at Premier League matches. I'm not even interested in looking at the schedule and analyzing what may happen from certain results, because it's just a shit show at this point. So better go out and beat Roma is maybe the short answer to that rant.
Yeah, it's one match at a time when it comes to that. And obviously that's all you can do. Let's touch a little bit more on Will Lankshear, because the goal was great, and it was great for him to get a start and get his first competitive goal. But boy, oh boy, you saw the inexperience with picking up the second yellow card. It was just foolish. And I'm not obviously putting the entire defeat on him, but Spurs came back and scored another goal after he was sent off. A 10-man Spurs did make this a 3-2 match. And you hate to kind of wonder what might have happened had they been at full strength. And maybe been able to get a third and equalize in this match and get a point from it. A point at that stage of the match would have been just absolutely it would have felt like a win and a half, frankly. What did you see from Will Lankshear, Caroline? Because I thought it was a fine performance, but obviously you can't you can't be that boneheaded and do what he did in that moment.
I mean, I think he looks really great when he's in the box, and when he's outside of it, not so much. And again, I think it's just coming down to youthful inexperience. Like, I don't think has the best grasp of what's expected of him defensively in the system. And, we know that obviously the under 21s team has been playing a very similar way, but at the same time, they're not coming up against teams at the level of Galatasaray. So I think this is just going to be a good learning experience for him. And, it's a shame that now he won't, be able to get minutes in the next game, but hopefully he can put it behind him.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for the same. I do, to some extent. I wonder if this was the match that you needed to give him. But I know rotation is what it is. Like, but it's a really tough environment to go away to Istanbul and expect something. But obviously he did score, and but you got to have the discipline as well to know when to make a challenge and when not to. And unfortunately, in that moment, he did not. Where do we want to go next, guys? Do we want to talk about Hugo Lloris before we talk about Spurs women? Because there's a little bit of Hugo Lloris news from this week that I guess we kind of got to get off our chest a little bit. Hugo Lloris has a new autobiography out and took a dig at the club in some ways, but mostly I think it was at Daniel Levy. Told a story in this about how days before the Champions League final in 2019, Daniel Levy gifted the club with new watches that were inscribed with Champions League finalist on them. This very much had vibes of the club selling mugs and pens with Carabao Cup finalist on them from a few years ago, which I had to remind some people on social media about. Like, this is what they do. But it seemed like Hugo Lloris was trying to imply that the chairman was just satisfied with being there, just happy to be along for the ride. And the Hugo Lloris stuff comes at kind of a really terrible time, as we've been talking about during this whole episode. Like, not the week for this, Hugo, but also I think there's something to be said for more people knowing about just mentality and mindset and kind of where things are. And the more and more we bitch about things, the more and more they seem to almost just stay the same, Scott.
Yeah, I didn't love hearing this. Again, it's whatever. This is years ago, right? But I do think that the mentality issue probably runs deeper than just the squad, right? I think Ange has seen that and maybe even called out the fans last year when it came to that City match, right? So we certainly were happy to be in the final as fans. We were certainly happy to be in the final. I think we celebrated Ajax like we had won the competition, right? So if I look from the perspective of Hugo Lloris, guy won the World Cup, guy could have been between the posts for any team in the world in his prime, right? And rode it out with Spurs. And he probably just as a human being looks back on his career and said it could have been a little bit more at the club level if I wasn't at Tottenham the entire time. And maybe that doesn't leave the best taste in his mouth. So I'm not super surprised that this came out, but I will say to give out watches that celebrate making a final is pretty silly. I mean, just don't inscribe anything on the watch and say, here's a gift for getting this far, right? And because like Hugo said, if I had a watch that had an inscription that reminded me that I lost the biggest match of my life, I wouldn't fucking wear that thing ever. So,
and he said he never has, by the way. He's never worn the watch.
Why would he? So yeah, just, I don't know, but probably goes into the conversation around the club and seeing opportunities to drive revenue. And again, not the watches, right? That was a gift, but just, we talk about the mugs, the Carabao Cup final and all of that. So, yeah.
Well, and speaking of revenue, he also talked about the $10 million deal that Spurs made to have the Amazon All or Nothing documentary made, and spoke about how, maybe the players might have expected to see a little bit of a bump from that. Wasn't the case, except for having their privacy invaded. And he said it was extremely invasive and it was a problem, and all these types of things. I mean, I've heard a lot about these documentaries, and we hear about it with like here in the States, there's the HBO Hard Knocks NFL documentary that happens every year, and players bitch and moan about this kind of thing all the time. I have a little bit less empathy for that because it is a promotional opportunity for the club. I can't tell you how many people I've heard tell me that they saw documentaries that led them to becoming a fan of a club. I'm sure that happened for Spurs with the All or Nothing, but at the same time, it can be invasive and it can be problematic. And Hugo's just, I guess it's his time to voice his concerns as he kind of winds down his career in MLS over the next handful of seasons. But Caroline, what do you have on this? Because this obviously the time, like I think the most frustrating part for me for this is the timing because of everything just gesturing, everything going on. But like this was not what I wanted to read about this week, and obviously I had to.
Yeah, I think we might have to assume at this point that Hugo has a purple and gold burner account. I don't disagree with him about the watches. Like, obviously, that's just like, come on. What were you thinking, Daniel? Like the biggest jinx possible. But at the same time, I don't really love this from Hugo because it's not like he wasn't on the pitch in those games. It's not like he didn't have the opportunity to affect the result. And I feel like we get the same kind of stuff from Harry Kane too, like just kind of forgetting the fact that, you know, they were a part of that losing team and they had some responsibility to change it. So I don't know. I'm mostly just annoyed by this storyline, basically.
That's kind of where I am too. It comes off, in one respect, it comes off as sour grapes, but in the other respect, when you hear it from multiple sources, you're like, okay, well, maybe there's something to mentality and profit being king, which I think we all have discussed that quite obviously it is. This is a business that we're talking about. And I think what we all want is for the balance of it being a business versus a football club to be more in balance rather than it being outweighed by one thing or the other. And that's, for me, I think is the most frustrating part. But I don't have much else to say. I think you guys kind of covered it. This was annoying. I think, Caroline, you summed it up perfectly. This was an annoying story to have to deal with this week. And I am not happy that we did, but we did. We covered it. I'd love to hear what the listeners think. Please chime in the comments, reach out on social media, because this is something that I think it divides opinion more than most things. Like, I think we can all agree Spurs aren't playing well, so on and so forth. Spurs should do this, Spurs should do that. But like, this is something that I think it divides opinion more than most things. So I'd be interested to hear what the listeners and the viewers think on that. The good news keeps on coming as we move to talk about Spurs women this week, which I think this was one that we probably would have and should have expected more than anything else. But Spurs do go up to the Etihad on Friday and lose 4-0 to Man City. And it was the Bunny Shaw show once again. 3 goals for her, and one of them coming, was it like 28 seconds in on just a horrendous back pass. And I think from that moment on, you kind of felt like this was just going to be the way it went for this one. But Caroline, what's the grand takeaway other than not good from this one?
The grand takeaway is that we do not learn the lessons we are supposed to be learning when it comes to Bunny Shaw. And to me, that's like the most unforgivable aspect of this result is the fact that I think I read she's the only player who scored 3 hat tricks against the same team in the league, like in the history of the league. So that's depressing. And it's not like she scores the same goal either. Like she hits us multiple ways and we don't have an answer for any of them. So I just can't believe that we failed to mark her on all 3 of those goals. And the Claire Hunt situation is really disappointing. Dire? Yeah, dire. Yeah, I think that's honestly the best way to put it, because she's supposed to be the one who was coming in and raising the level of the defense. And I think she has in some ways, like it's usually not on her when we're, in those set piece situations, but she's not been looking very good at actually playing out and doing the things that we're supposed to be doing as a possession-based team in theory. That's not really worked out in practice lately. Like, I feel like kind of like the men's team in this game, against Ipswich, like we just are not fast enough. We're not sharp enough. And it really is highlighted against a team like City, who have just insane quality across their whole squad, like even their substitutes. It's just like night and day, honestly. And it's frustrating to me because I felt like we had made some strides in terms of improving our fitness level to be able to better compete with teams like this. And we've seen it in some games. We're always talking about like the middle of the pack kind of improving with us. And we saw that earlier this season with the really close results against Villa and Liverpool. But I almost feel like this season we're going backwards against the top teams. And that is really, really concerning.
Yeah, we kind of had this conversation a few weeks ago about like, what is this season going to become for Spurs women? And I think this result stamps what it could potentially be. And while I still don't think we're yet in a realm where we are, oh God, are we going to get relegated? We're certainly not going the other direction. Like, it's not going to be a season where we remotely challenge for top 3, 4, 5 positions. It's going to be hold on to your butt and hope for a mid-pack type of finish. Scott, what did you see from this? Bunny Shaw obviously is the story. Lauren Hemp is obviously the story. Like, these are world-class players that kind of made a meal out of everything that was in this match.
Yeah, I mean, like Caroline said, an individual error from Claire early in the game puts us in a hole against the best side in the world, probably, right? And that's a tough place to be, or one of the best sides. But so yeah, we started off very poorly. I said in the group chat during the match, it's very evident to me that no one knows what they're going to do when the ball gets to them until they have the ball, and then they start trying to figure it out, right? Which was very problematic against a team like City, who will just swarm the ball and look to win it back at all costs, right? Their City is so incredibly organized that everybody knows what to do. They execute perfectly, and that the slow patterns in play are going to get eaten alive by a side like that. So that was tough to see. Jess Naz is on an island. Beth is on an island. I also don't know why we continue to see Beth on the flank. Beth is a striker and a very good finisher, a poacher, if you will, right? And seeing her again just patrolling the right side in a 4-4-2, right? Just doesn't make any sense to me. I think Martha Thomas, needs to be getting a few more minutes, and I know she hasn't been great, but ultimately when you have Jess Naz and Beth on 2 separate islands, right, you're really going to struggle. You need those 2 to be involved in the play. But I think ultimately my biggest concern with the women is I think we've gotten worse since last season. I don't see improvement, right? And that's probably the biggest concern for me. On the men's side, like, I see the improvement and I see the things that are happening and I see the plan, right? Even though it's not being executed. But on the women's side, we look absolutely lost, and it's really hard to say that after a season in which we looked fairly good last year. So yeah, just a tough one. But again, it's City too. So if we look at it through a vacuum, it probably feels a lot worse than it actually is too.
And I think some of that has to do with injury as well. Like, we saw Haley Rasso make a return from injury in this match, coming off the bench. Like that is a small part of this, but you guys hit it on the head. The speed in which this team played with was just not there. There was a couple of different instances where they got the ball back, and look, how are you going to be able to win this match? You're going to have to counterattack. You're going to have to play a slightly different style than Robert Villahamn wants to play, but you're going to be outwitted and outmatched in pretty much every asset of this match. And when you counterattack, you have to do it quickly. And Spurs simply did not move with any kind of speed in this match. And I think you brought up Bethany England. Like, she seemed more frustrated than anyone at the lack of pace that the rest of the team was moving with. There were multiple instances where she was caught offside because the ball was not moving to her quick enough. It wasn't because she was lingering and being lazy and not getting back onside. It was because the ball wasn't getting put her way quick enough. And when it finally was, she was caught in an offside position. So that was really frustrating to me. And then it was a little puzzling to me that she came off in this match after 56 minutes. Like I thought she was the one kind of bright spot, along with maybe Suminen, who I thought was doing some decent enough things and trying to get something going forward. But when you're down as early as you are and you know you're up against it, like I don't know what else can really happen, Caroline.
Well, and this is one thing that I've always kind of struggled with when it comes to Robert Villaham. His subs just always baffle me. And especially in this game, I kind of understand. Well, obviously, Claire Hunt coming off, I think, had to happen for her sake. And we needed Amy James Turner to get some minutes. So I guess that was a net positive. And obviously, we wanted to see Haley Rosso come back. But Charlie Grant coming in as a winger was so strange to me. And
Yeah.
I guess I can kind of understand the rationale in that, like, her pace is her biggest asset, and that was what we needed in that moment. But at the same time, you also have Lena Gunning-Williams on the bench, who I know is really, really young, but so far has not shown herself to be daunted by the speed of the league. And I think she brings better qualities to her actual position than Charlie Grant would have. So I did not understand that one. And, I know I'm always saying that, like, Drew Spence needs to get a rest, but at the same time, she was our biggest chance of creating something. So to see her go off was also very strange. And I agree with you on Beth England. Like, she, to me, is the one thing that's been kind of holding the team together these last few weeks, which I guess you want to see since she is the captain. But and this is just like pure speculation on my part, but it kind of feels like part of the team is behind Robert and part is not. And I think she falls under the pro Robert camp. And you can kind of see the divisions playing out on the pitch in terms of, like, the effort, which really sucks to say. But I think his job probably is under a lot more pressure right now than Ange's is. And it's, it's frustrating because, I think with both teams, I really don't want us to change the manager, because I feel like we kind of just have to ride out these tough times and commit to the project, like we've been talking about, over the last season and the start of this one. But I don't know. At the same time, I'm starting to have, like, serious doubts about his tactical decisions. So
Yeah. I mean, the first place I would start is try not allowing Bunny Shaw to score 12 goals in 5 matches against you. Like, that would be the one place I would start from. But obviously the next challenge is not an easy one either, because it's Arsenal. It's the North London Derby, and it comes up at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. So it certainly does not get any easier going forward for Spurs women. And that's where we go.
And can I just add to that, this is a game at the main stadium. From what I have heard, kind of behind the scenes, tickets are not selling well. And part of that, I think, comes down to marketing from the club and just the fact that we've not really, capitalized on the whole getting to an FA Cup final situation the way we should have. But part of it does come down to performances, and, the team is not getting results. So it's so frustrating with women's football, because I feel like it's so often a case of, like, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And right now we're in the 2 steps back portion with Spurs women.
Such is life. Such is like, maybe that's kind of the grand theme of this episode, is 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or maybe 3 or 4 steps back. It's what it feels like for the week that was, just in general. So I think we'll leave it there. You can follow Scott at Scott G Bird. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. You can follow me at Ace Stetka. Follow us at Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page as well, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. That's going to do it. We will be back next week to talk about that very North London Derby and see how many fans do get to the stadium. I would encourage anyone who's able to go check it out. It's a good opportunity to see the stadium and see some football, and hopefully it goes better than this past week did. We will be back to talk to you then. Until then, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.